Name is Layla, and on this Christmas evening loneliness enveloped my home like a thick fog. My husband had been away on business for 3 months, and my son Jimmy had gone to Canada for a short-term job. Every corner of our home reminded me of them, the walls like mute witnesses retained the warmth of their presence. I tried to focus on the celebration which, in addition to the outward riot of colors and sounds, reminded me of the loss of closeness on this merry Monday. I tried to bypass focusing on the moments when we gathered as a family to celebrate Christmas, laugh and share our best memories with each other, but this time the silence drowned out the joy. While all around me were the voices of guests rising from the window, I only had to pretend no one could see me, trying to keep a smile on my face. The newspaper I held in my hands was nothing more than a mask, alive, but as if dead. I felt sluggish like an old toy. I often looked out the window while others were engaged in the festivities. Suddenly, across the street, I noticed a young man who had just moved into the house across the street. His hair glistened in the sun, and his deep blue eyes drew my gaze, as if they were a mesmerizing ocean I wanted to dive into. Looked solidly built and confident, my will solidified with every move he made. Each of his appearances urged me to peak. A mysterious sensation drew me in, as if a thin thread had ignited a spark in Sadim that I had long forgotten about. Despite the loneliness I was drawn taught his new spark more and more each day. Ash walked out of the house. I noticed passers by stopping to stare at him. He exuded a confidence that I was sorely lacking. Every time he walked by, a fire lit up inside of me. In those moments I felt more alive than ever. The days went by, and the feelings became more vivid and confusing. It was more than just curiosity, it was like waiting for a miracle. I kept peeking at the young man who, despite his age, seemed to be the embodiment of the youth and energy I needed. Perhaps in his appearance I was looking for a reflection of my son, who was as beautiful as this young man. I dreamed of how he would come into my life, how he would lift my spirits like Jimmy always did. Because I missed my son so much, I could help but notice how much I was drawn to this stranger. I decided that despite all my longing, I should be ready for fate's surprise. I dressed in my best dress that I had once worn for my family and took a seat by the window. There was a mystical charm in the air that night, and the thought that Jimmy might return filled me with hope. And then, at the very moment when I was looking at the twinkling lights, the lights now began to fall, creating a fairy tale atmosphere around me. Suddenly I saw him, the same young man who had been attracting my attention all these days. He was standing under a lantern, and his face was illuminated by the soft light, creating a picture that took my breath away. I couldn't believe it, and my thoughts froze. I didn't expect that he could come into my life so quickly and get my feelings. A few moments passed, and he glanced in my direction, as if catching the silence that surrounded me. Caught his gaze, and in that moment it hot. He understood me, that there was hope left in this world. Perhaps he was just a pretty face, but this one unexpected spark, the fire his eyes lit, became more important to me than any holiday in years past. I knew that even if that magic proved fleeting, it remained a part of my soul. The night went on, and I waited as I had once waited for Jimmy. This handsome stranger brought new colors into my life and hope that there was still room in the world for moments of happiness. When I opened the gate and saw him, I was overcome with a magical feeling that is hard to describe in words. This young man standing in front of me was like a fresh breath of spring in the midst of a cold winter evening. His eyes, like a clear sky, shone with sincerity, and his smile was so warm that even the frost outside the window seemed insignificant. In that moment I realized how much I wanted him to bring the warmth and joy to my home that I had been missing. I invited him in, and Ash crossed our cozy threshold. The air was filled with boldness and anticipation. Dressed in sleek black pants and a white shirt, he looked stunning. My red dress seemed to echo the shade of his confidence. I was ready for this moment. We both knew our introduction was going to be something special, though neither of us realized the full depth of the many emotions to come. Trying not to show my excitement, I motioned for him to take a seat at the table that was set with thoughts of making him happy. My hands trembled as I set before him the dishes I had prepared with love all these days, missing the real companionship and connectedness. Each bite became a symbol for me of the desires that were building up inside, not caring about his hunger or my loneliness. As he eagerly began to savor the treat, I noticed a glimmer of warmth in his gaze. The more he ate, the clearer it became that it wasn't just hunger. He felt the same spark, the same attraction that filled my heart with light. I held his gaze, feeling an invisible bond forming between us, deeper than any connection I'd ever known. With each new treat, our interaction intensified. I caught his attention as if to calm my emotions, and in that moment, when he looked at me again with intense interest, it was clear to me that there was something more between us, not just a physical attraction, but an inexplicable connection that seemed to set our hearts on the same wavelength. As he stood up to pour himself some water, his hand touched mine, and a spark passed between us. It was such a divisive moment that I froze. It was as if time had stopped and the world around us was a blur. My heart beat faster, and I felt excitement fill me inside. His touch was so gentle that I mentally wrapped myself in his embrace, not even realizing how much I missed it. After months of being alone, every moment we exchanged glances plunged us into an atmosphere full of anticipation. I noticed his uncertainty even though the young man himself seemed so strong and confident. He caught Miss Smile lighting up the room and my eyes a reflection of his interest in what hand I shared the restaurant food and that kissiness created by my hands made us forget about time immersed in conversations full of deep meanings. I looked at him and suddenly all the doubts that had haunted me until that moment vanished without a trace. I wanted to continue this symphony sincerely and simply. I could feel time flowing and with each passing minute, a shadow of unprecedented intimacy between us. When the conversation died down and there was a pause, energy filled everything around us. He raised his head and our gazes met. At that moment my heart burst out of my chest. I knew we were both waiting for something inevitable, just one moment to take a step into the unknown full of new possibilities. Christmas evening took on a special meaning. It was not just a dinner, but the beginning of a new story full of hope and expectation. We were strangers, but at that moment, we felt close and related, as if we had traveled together several lives and many strips of invisible roads. I realized that once again I was discovering a world that had found light no matter how it ended. It was an enticing feeling I couldn't forget as airsold. The Christmas display of happiness and tenderness was sprouting deeper into my heart with each passing moment, and I knew for sure that this was only the beginning. When I felt his hot arms embracing me, it was the moment I felt the wave of tenderness and happiness I'd been dreaming of for 3 long months. He became more than just a neighbor to me, he was someone who filled my heart with warmth again. I took a deep breath, savoring the thrill that gripped to the bottom of my soul. Each touch carried me further away from the anxiety and loneliness that haunted me. The world around me seemed to dissolve, leaving just the two of us, me and him. We moved in unison, his palms touching my back, and I sank into his arms, feeling time stop. In that moment, I didn't notice the door open and Jimmy walked in. The jolt of reality made me wince and I stumbled back to the moment, of course, but as soon as I saw his love-filled eyes, I was overcome with shame. He looked at me with bewilderment, but his expression was never judgmental, rather a tread caring and understanding. Jimmy had been my light in dark times, and even now when I was on the verge of a major life change, I knew he wasn't going to judge him. There was no room in his soul for accusations. He had always been my protector, and now in this moment he left us alone, silently walked out and closed the door behind him as if giving us a chance to keep that fragile spark alive, but also with the knowledge that beyond it remained his heart full of concern for his mother. When that young man left, I was alone, and the thought of Jimmy began to torment me. I felt guilty for plunging into this new world of happiness without waiting for him to return, but at the same time something strange flared up inside me, the realization that we all deserved happiness. I spoke parting words to my son in my head, invoking forgiveness. I'm sorry, Jimmy, you know how long your father has been gone and how much I miss your warmth and personal happiness. I felt remorse fill me, but at the same time I realized I couldn't hide my desires. There was a strong bond between us. Jimmy came back and looked me in the eye and asked if I could listen to him, and nodded, readily opening myself to his wisdom, which seemed to be more than many adults had. His words were full of love and support. Mom, if you want to be happy, I want you to be happy. Even with him, please just know I want you to smile. Those simple yet depth-filled words sank into my soul. I realized that I didn't have to feel alone or ashamed of my feelings, because he too longed to see his mother happy. Jimmy, as if sensing joy, offered to turn our house into a place of celebration and said we should take advantage of Christmas to celebrate this night together. He was so bright and those words brought me peace and warmth. I smiled back at him, and in that moment the world around me became even more cozy. Night had fallen. Outside the window came the sounds of a Christmas party. Jimmy and I had organized our own little party, filling the house with a message of love, that even in dark times it is possible to be happy. Over cups of tea we discussed everything: his world, our dreams, the importance of supporting each other. Our triple laughs blended into one. I could feel the lightness enveloping this and realized that now, with my son by my side, he would give me the joy I had been looking for so long. Tea fueled the atmosphere, and even as I thought again of the young man in front of me, here was harmony within me. Together we were creating a story full of support and love. This evening was the beginning of something new, but not only between my neighbor and me, but above all in my and Jimmy's relationship. Our hearts were filled with joy and our eyes reflected happiness. We sat on the couch holding hands, for it was in that single spark of love between mother and son that the most incredible thing was to be found. It wasn't just Christmas, it was a celebration of the hope I had dreamed of for so long. Without words, immersed in the atmosphere of happiness, we realized that our home was warm again, and that was the best of all possible gifts.